Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about why women are not thinking about generational wealth. And as a woman and as a mother, this is something that I think about, honestly. And I think this is something that so many other people out there that are listening are thinking about. And thankfully, I got Dr. Toya on my show so that we can think about this some more. So thank you so much, Dr. Toya, for coming on my show. Let's just dive in. Why is this something that we really need to think about?
Really, because one thing I totally believe is that women's role in the world is to have a mellowing influence, a tender influence on whatever extremes are going on. And there's a lot of extremes going on now. And our influence is absolutely vital for having a more, shall we say, humane society. And in doing so, how do we influence that outcome? And in whatever we do, it's not just about the things we do. It's also about investment. And it's not just time investment. There has to be money investment. So there has to be something. And how do you leave a legacy? By being able to get something that not only extends beyond your family, sending your kid to college and, setting them up for their wedding, giving them a small amount for their first house. How does it extend wider into the world? How does it affect other people? And how do you leave a true legacy? And you'll find that women have not been anywhere near where they need to be. They don't have the influential say in those decisions, in those happenings, in those changes. And I believe that if we had the ability to come up with generational wealth, to develop generational wealth, we'll have a better say in what happens to ourselves, our bodies, other people, our children, the world.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot because those are a lot of points that kind of scare people. You know what I mean? Because it's a lot. It's a lot to think about. And a lot of the times women or just people in general will just they once they get overwhelmed, they just reject that thought. Like if I don't think about it, then I don't got to worry about it. Then it won't affect me. And then when it comes up, it's not enough because it's like you said, we go to a certain extent. Okay, well, so to a certain extent, I'll pay for my children and make sure they have a roof over the head. I'll make sure I have a house, or I'll just make sure that I leave some money for graduation or so, like you said earlier. And it's like, where is it where it's long term and it expands? And that's what I love when you said that. Like it has to outstretch and out. It's not just your generation. It's the generations that affects your generations as well. And that's the beauty of it, is because when you're able to think in that type of mind frame, then you're able to acknowledge what you do matters. What you put your mind into matters. But generational wealth can mean so much to so many different people. Can you explain it in your words? What does it mean really to you, generational wealth?
There is wealth, which means kind of like you are comfortable. But even wealth is all relative. We know these days that there are many young people who are having to move in with their parents who were ostensibly, wealthy, bordering on something. But having a dependent child is not the definition of true wealth. And how do you empower the children? It's not just simply by giving them something, it's by something that is seeded through the generations. And it becomes compound interest. You start with a small seed and it grows. Can it grow by even just the interest that comes off it? Can it grow? Can you have endowments? Can you have huge legacies that come out of this? And if it's just for yourself and your family, that may be wealth. If it is for future generations, your third, fourth, fifth generation, i.e., Carnegie, the Rothschilds, Walmart, all kinds of things, that's generational wealth. And I don't know whether it's women are too scared to think about it. I have a theory about it. But women, I can't remember one woman where the actual generational wealth began with her. It wasn't inherited. It wasn't from some settlement. It began with her. We're good for all kinds of things. Yes, you are the mother of. Where was your seed from your whatever intellectual property, your child, that went generations and benefited. And I'm not just talking, I'm talking of true wealth where you can say, guess what? Like, okay, let me give you an example if that's okay.
Yes,
What got
please.
me thinking about this was the woman who gave $1 billion to a medical school in one of
Yeah.
those inner New York areas,
Yes, I remember seeing that.
to the medical school for free tuition. Now, the
Hmm.
backstory, which to me was somewhat, shall we say, dampening, was that it wasn't her money. It was her husband's money. And
Hmm.
he was smart enough to say, okay, if you live after me, you can do what you like. So she had a choice as to what she did with it. But she's also elderly. I think she must be in her 70s or 80s or
Yeah.
something like that. And she taught there. But it would have meant so much as a role model as what people can do if the woman had her own money and who said, this is what I'm going to do with it. Because that's what they say about, that's what they're saying about all, people like Jeff Bezos's wife, people like Bill Gates' wife. Yes, there was a marriage, but did you have your own separate money which became generational wealth?
Hmm.
And they're not. So they're going to be slammed by some people who should remain nameless and who don't really care, all those misogynists who say, well, it's because they were married to somebody, and they end up belittling their accomplishments. We need to take that kind of initiative for ourselves.
Yeah, take that initiative to ourselves. And what I realize is kind of like you said earlier, is that sometimes we don't want to think about that, and we just avoid that. And do you think it comes down to how, when you're not exposed to a wealthy family, you're not exposed with people with healthy financial relationships, and you're not exposed to how to actually manage your money correctly. It takes time for that woman to actually implement that and for herself. And then it takes time for her to realize, okay, now that I grasp this concept, now that I've acknowledged this for myself, now it's time for me to take that step forward to think about what else I can do for not just myself, but my future children, for my family, for everyone that I impact. You know what I mean? I think, in my opinion, that's just the beginning stage that women need to acknowledge. Like, because there's a lot of women out there who come from nothing. You know what I mean? Who come from nothing. And I think I'm gonna say me included, is like we believe in the generational thought process, but then as soon as we step out of it and we acknowledge what we really can empower ourselves to be and to do, it we have to let go of that fear. You know what I mean? You have to let go of that fear because you have to step into that unknown, the
Yes.
possibilities, because when you're older and you've lived with that grace of knowing you put your work in, and other people can see that you put your work in. I mean, that is how you can acknowledge that you put in that generational wealth. But it's going to eventually take that time to acknowledge that and put that work in. I mean, that's how I see it. I mean, in your opinions, am I right? Is am I on board?
Yes, you're on board. And for sure, I mean, we have one very, very good example, and there's no doubt that people like role models. It motivates them. But people haven't really, most women have not really taken it on board. They say, oh, it means I can achieve something. But it's beyond achieving a thing for yourself. People like Oprah is the ultimate female, as far as I'm concerned, the ultimate female, generational wealth builder. Yes, she does not have children, but that does not mean that she cannot, which she has with schools and with all kinds of things all over the place, affect the future of many people. And that is what a true generational wealth stroke legacy, because it's affecting generations. That's what it
Mhm.
is. It's affecting generations. But a lot of people kind of like, they say, oh, I like to do it. And yes, they will work hard, but they stop short at taking that leap. They stop short from taking that leap from I'm comfortable to I am super fantastic. Because yes, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of strategy. And my theory about that is that just as women are ramping up to their I'm on top of it all. I'm kicking ass. I am crushing it at work. Guess what comes along? Yeah, childbearing comes earlier and they've moved beyond childbearing. But menopause comes at the exact time when you're getting to what is practically the zenith of your career, where you're saying, okay, I'm going to become this, I'm going to diversify, I'm going to become a director, I'm going to, really push for it. And with the fact that so many women suffer, if you like, adverse effects from it, they settle, they move down, they don't achieve. And what happens? The men is the absolute point which they take off, because that is where they're having the sufficient income to really build something for the next 30, 40 years. And women, once you're left behind, guess what? You're left behind, it goes down. You go off and you compound interest builds it such that the gap is so wide, you can't cover that gap anymore. And this is generational wealth. This is just okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like the way you said that. We do settle. Sometimes it's hard, but we need to acknowledge that that's what's happening. We
Yes.
have to acknowledge that. And once we acknowledge that's what it is that's going on, and why this anger is building up is because inside of you, you shouldn't be settling. You know
Because
what
we're
I mean?
capable of so much more. So,
Yes.
so, so much more.
Oh, only if we actually allowed ourselves to embrace all that we really could be. Oh my goodness. Imagine the world that we would live in. It would be totally a different world. It would
Oh,
be
beyond, beyond, beyond.
hmm,
So, we need to
it
get the
is.
message out there to women to encourage them that they, not just as a who am I to build generational wealth? It's who are you not to build generational wealth?
Yeah,
And how do I go
exactly.
about it? It's staying power. It's staying power. If you don't have staying
Mm,
power, you're not going to make it.
yeah.
You have to tough it out for 30, 40 years. And that good chunk of that 30, 40 years is beyond menopause. That, perimenopause and menopause, it's in that period because our life expectancy at 80, average life expectancy, 81 in the US, 84 or 5 in Canada, is such that you're living a lot of your adult life and your most productive possible years beyond, you know, that age
Sure.
from your 40s onwards. You can't settle at that point because you've just lost the whole thing if you settle.
I know. You're just throwing in the towel. It's
Exactly.
ridiculous. There's really no point. You gotta keep moving and moving forward. So I guess it leads to my next question. When did you in your life that you realized that you needed to do this for yourself and your family and your environment? That you needed to
Oh,
start looking
it
for
came at the
general.
point at which menopause hit, basically, because I kind of
Oh,
like realized it could take me down or I could keep on swimming. And at the time, there weren't that many options. And I did go the traditional, I'm a physician, I did go the traditional medical route. That did not work for me. And I
mhm.
realized that, guess what? There needs to be a new way of looking at this. I need to get out and start. So I did a lot of research, a lot of, trial and error, a lot of stuff like that.
Mhm.
But then I knew I wasn't going to be settled because I knew I was capable of a heck of a lot more. And the only way to reach or to at least continue moving was to make something like menopause irrelevant, not to make it into such a situation where, you go to a doctor and he tells you that's normal, suck it up. It's like, what? I don't have to do anything like that. I got things to do, baby.
Yeah, exactly. I know I spoke with another woman from the UK who we discussed menopause more, and she was so funny because she said the same thing. She said at first when she got menopause, she was in denial. She was just rejecting it because she was like, "No, that means I'm getting old," and it's hard to deal with. And she's like, "Now I just embrace it. I just laugh with it. I enjoy it. I make it as much of my life because it is my life. It's part of her
It is
now, you
important.
know?
It is,
And I
it
feel
is,
like
it's
if
not a
more
disease.
women, yeah, if more women embrace that, they wouldn't see it as a disease. They wouldn't see it as the end
It's
of their
not.
life. They wouldn't see it as the ending of womanhood because that's not the ending of womanhood. Who says you are no longer a woman? Who says that? Nobody. Not
But they
even you can say
Yeah,
that. You know what I
they've
mean?
they've drunk that Kool-Aid, which is put out by people who are trying to diminish you, and it's
Hmm.
our job to make sure we're not diminished. Because basically, don't care what you call it, the patriarchy, etc., it's in their best interest to put us down so that they can rule the world. And we say, hang on a minute. We make up 51% of the world. We have an equal say on what goes on, particularly to our bodies, ourselves, our finances. We have our say. How dare you think you can tell me what to do with my body?
Exactly. I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. So I have this quote here, and I want to know your opinions and what this quote makes you think about. So the quote goes, generational wealth isn't just about money. It's the legacy of values, knowledge, and opportunities you leave behind. I know that's kind of what we talked about, but what do you
Yeah.
think about when you hear that quote?
Because it's a whole thing. Like I said, there's a good component of money, but there is never just one thing in anything. It's never just money. Because you consider the people who left that legacy, their lifestyle. You cannot get that amount of money without having certain values, certain
Mm.
habits, success habits worthy of emulation. You cannot live that kind of legacy. There will be something, which is why there are, so many books written about, a lot of the people who've left legacies, because there is something we can take from it. Because there is, so it's the habits, the thought processes, the what they did, to be able to give you something tangible like that to be able to continue. So it's a whole package. So it's
Yeah.
not just, it cannot never just be about money. It's just that
Yeah.
it's there, and money does help you get a good education. But is it the only thing? It just makes it life easier. Instead of
Yeah.
having to wash plates in the college cafeteria, if you could spend your time actually in the library or doing whatever it is the equivalent of these days to get the knowledge you want so that you can actually sink down, it's much better. But of course, other people have come from nowhere in adverse circumstances. And, there is something to be said for that as a driver. There is something to be said for that. But
Mm.
it is not, everybody should not have to, come from adverse circumstances to be
Yes.
able to leave generational wealth.
Correct. I really like that last statement. I think that's very powerful. And I think that's something that people don't think about either because they think, oh, I have money, I'm fine. And then they end up splurging it and then they end up not having money. And then you don't have anything to leave behind. And then the cycle starts all over again where that one person's like, oh, this is either what it is, or they choose, oh, no, this is not what it's going to be, what it is. And that, I liked how you said it's that driver. It's that one that motivates you, that ignites that fire within you where nothing is good enough, but it's not because you're not grateful, but it's because you are set up for more. There's more to come. There's something better out there. And I feel like that's something where people need to separate. It's not about it's not about that selfish mindset, because when you have that selfish mindset, you don't get generational wealth.
No, you can't.
Nothing gets out of that, in my opinion. In my opinion,
No.
a selfish mindset will leave you a circle in a dirt by yourself, and that's it. I
You
mean,
become, it's like lottery winners. You don't have the right mindset. You don't have the, and the statistics of all of lottery winners, as I'm sure you're aware, is that within a year they're back to or worse than when they won the money. And we're talking people who've won millions, multi-millions of
yeah.
dollars.
Oh
And they
yeah.
look on it because they didn't have the mindset. They didn't have the ability to see this as a way of fulfilling something. They just saw it as a bonus, splurge, buy physical things, give away stuff. And of course, what happens? Just disappears.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It disappears. I love it. I love it. So I have to ask you, I'm curious, what do you do for you to be Zen and to what's your medicine? You know what I mean? What is your form of be like, you know what? I need to recenter myself. How do you do that for you?
Oh, I believe that at all times you have different things, maybe short, medium, and long term. I meditate every morning. Now, if I'm feeling that, this thing is getting beyond me, then I have techniques that I can do, usually a breathing technique, to bring me down to center. Because guess what? Somebody's just shouting at you and you're thinking, ugh, I feel like punching this person in the face, but I don't feel like going to prison for it. So what do I do? Because whenever we're angry or stressed, we become illogical. So how do you bring yourself back to logical? How do you, halt yourself in the middle of provocation? And that usually means having a habit of saying, okay, let me look at this way. It's more about them. It's not about me. There are some things I need to let go, or, have a more reasoned discussion about it. So that's it. And I think it's important. Stress is good, by the way. Some acute stress. We use the stress to build our muscles, to build all kinds of things. But chronic stress is the killer. And it's why we have to have a control over long-term stress. So even if you have a high stakes job, career, whatever, what do you do? How do you take care of yourself? How do you let go of work?
Yes.
And move into play?
Yes. I love that. Thank you so much for explaining it to me the way that you did, because I'm pretty sure that somebody who's listening is going to take that into consideration and be like, huh, maybe that is what I just need to do. You never know. You never know. And that's the reason why you got to have these conversations, just so that it can spark that curiosity, can spark that thought. It can just let you marinate those words, let it sink in, because one day when it finally clicks, you're going to be like, this is it. And you know what I mean? So that's the reason why I love this conversation, because women need to start thinking about what they're leaving behind. It's more than just a name, it's more than just an attitude, it's more than just a story, and once we realize that, then we will start acting with more purpose and with more grace, and women need to
Wow.
realize that there's so much purpose and grace within our lives, that once
Grace.
we tap into
So
that,
important.
it's a beautiful motion to go into. So I guess to start wrapping up the show, what can be some lasting words of wisdom that you can truly leave us off with? Even though, let's be honest, this conversation gave us so much to think about already. What can be some lasting words?
That in order to do things like that, you have to be healthy. There is no doubt about it. You need energy, you need vitality, you need stamina to do anything. And a lot of people underestimate the contribution of having enough energy and having the stamina to do so. And once you have the stamina, nothing becomes impossible. You have the energy to have the same 24 hours, but be more productive with those 24 hours. Do the things that matter. But when you don't have the energy, you're slumped, your brain is not thinking, and you make poor decisions. So the thing is to realize that your energy, your stamina, your everything builds on that. Build your health such that it becomes almost natural. Like it becomes a habit. It's not something that you have to think about when you're saying, oh, whatever. It's something that's there. And once you can do that, I believe you can do practically anything.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you so much for your time and your perspective and just sharing this moment with me, because if anything, I know I took away a lot from this conversation. Just to be able to talk openly and honestly with somebody about this is just a beautiful thing to do. So I truly do thank you for this. And if anybody, excuse me, would like to know more about Dr. Toya, please check out my website. I have access to everything that she has to offer to the world. And believe me, she has a lot to offer to the world. So why not check it out, especially if you already enjoyed this conversation. So with that being said, always, always keep thinking, y'all. Bye.